Hello everyone, welcome back to TMS Volvo in Coventry. It's a very exciting day for us here in the dealership, and I would be very pleased to say, meet the Volvo EX30. Now look at that. It is quite surreal seeing the car in person. I've had this car as my desktop background for the past 5 or 6 months, ever since I started working at the company. So seeing it in person, all of its lines and contours is absolutely phenomenal. Of course, being a Volvo, packed to the brim with amazing features, and I'm going to run through some of those with you in this video. So first of all, the EX30 is the first car Volvo have released since they've changed the platform. This is a platform designed specifically for electric cars, so the car has been designed from the ground up to be electric from the very start, and it's very telling in the way it's designed. Of course, there's no kind of modifications needed to cover up where there used to be a radiator grille for like a combustion engine, for example. So very clean lines at the front of the car. It's using their new pixel LED technology. Of course, you've still got your full LED main beam and dipped beam as well. You'll notice down towards the bottom, you don't have separate fog lights because that function is integrated with the main headlight functions themselves. So, up at the front of the car, you have a little aero grille at the very bottom. That just provides cooling for the battery pack. Of course, it's quite a large battery, so additional cooling is very useful, and the car automatically modulates its temperatures as and when needed. You do have a full array of parking sensors at the front of the car. Almost didn't spot them there for a second, just because they're so well integrated. You can barely see them against the black of the sort of mouth at the bottom. Really, really nice. Down below the headlights, other aero grills, these designed for cooling the brakes along with just helping the car move through the air as smoothly as possible, avoiding drag. And to go along with that, you've got these really nice 19-inch alloy wheels. So you can see very kind of diamond cut design in terms of the color schemes, but this center section here is actually an insert. It's called an aero insert, designed to make the wheels as flat as possible to avoid, again, additional drag. They can be removed, of course, to access the wheel nuts, or if you'd prefer design without, but they look really nice on this particular car. The wing mirrors, which we'll focus on more when the car has been unlocked, you'll notice they're a bit smaller. Basically, rather than having a big frame around the outside edge of the glass meets up pretty much where the edge of the wing mirror is, and that again allows them to reduce the size, reduce the induced drag caused by having large sort of ears sticking out the side of the car. So really, really nice, and the car does have bliss on it as well, which is the blind spot warning system. In the EX30, it's been upgraded a bit as well. So previously it was just for rear traffic on the left and right hand sides if you're on a motorway or dual carriageway, but they've got something now called the door opening alert. Basically what that will do is, let's say you've parked up on the side of the street, you're about to open the door and you've got a cyclist coming along on the right or left hand side. It can be a bad situation to get in, and that is how a lot of cyclists do get injured, unfortunately. EX30 will warn you about that. As soon as you're about to crack the door open, it'll warn you if it senses something in its proximity radar, which is again, really handy function, all about safety. Let's move around to the front here again. As I mentioned previously, it is a fully electric platform from the ground up, and that has allowed them to lower the car's height in terms, especially the bonnet line, as you can see there. If you compare it to something like an XC60, 90, or a 40 even, which is the smallest car up until now, you'll notice the bonnet line, the rake of the bonnet line is a lot steeper downwards, and again, just helps with aero and just making the car have a really nice presence in person. In terms of dimensions, it is a little bit shorter than the XC40 and a little bit less in terms of its height, but doesn't compromise in terms of storage options and, of course, passenger comfort. So I'm just going to whisk around to the driver's door handle. Car does feature keyless entry on the door handle itself. So again, as long as the key's on your person, you can put your hand inside the handle to unlock it, and then you've got this little pad which allows you to press and hold to lock the car. Another really nifty function which has been added exclusively for the new electric cars are these cards, which allow you to press up against the side and the car will automatically unlock. And of course you can press and hold the card again to lock the car. You see you've got these really nice welcoming lights that beam down from the wing mirrors themselves. And if you come around to the side, you'll probably get a much better angle in terms of how the glass section of the wing mirror looks. You can see just how flush it is and just how closed in it is compared to standard cars that have quite a big sort of area around the wing mirror itself. So, as I open the door, There you go. Have a good look inside this glorious interior. So, this particular car has the pine. Of course, would be remiss of me not to mention the amazing moss yellow of the outside of the car, but that's of course been very obvious on video. It's even more striking in person and even better in direct sunlight. Showroom lighting never does colours justification, but it still looks really, really nice. You can see EX30 with pride on the side of the dashboard there, and you'll see first and foremost change in the design of the steering wheel. So again, cramp things down a little bit, so a lot of the time you don't need that top space. I'm glad they haven't done the sort of Tesla yoke situation where you have to kind of wrangle it to get it to make sharp turns. You've still got a nice area you can grip if you want to do a full lock turn, for example. But it's been squashed down a little bit just to provide easier visibility in terms of the windscreen. There are a few buttons on the steering wheel itself, of course, and the stalks on either side, but I'll cover those when we hop inside the car and show you, of course, the center screen, which is absolutely massive and full of functions. But in terms of the little area here, there isn't actually a digital or analog display for things like your speed and things like that. Reason being is that works absolutely fine just being on the center screen to the left of where you're looking. You can just sort of see it out of your periphery, and of course the car does have functions built in which will limit the speed anyway to avoid you going over what is the indicated speed limit on the road. So you wouldn't have to worry necessarily about your speed as much in this car because the car will limit you automatically. But in front of the driver instead of that, you have a module which forms part of the driver understanding system. Very high-tech stuff. It uses the very similar technology to your iPhone if you've used Face ID in the past, LiDAR, where it scans your face, learns your facial geometry, and then if you get in the car and it detects that you're intoxicated, or if you're very tired or ill even, the car can alert you to that, which is very handy. So even if you're not aware that you have a cold and you might be not in the best position to drive, the car will alert you and make sure that you are fully versed in what you're about to do, basically. Moving on to the back seats. Like I mentioned, doesn't compromise in terms of rear passenger comfort. Still plenty of leg room for rear passengers. As you can see on the doors themselves, the handles are this really nice sort of pull design, really nice and sturdy, and of course the materials, again, being a Volvo, all premium materials and all absolutely fantastic in terms of the fit and finish in the car itself. Moving around to the back, of course you've got the letters for Volvo, again displayed with pride on the back of the car. You've got the really nice taillight design. One thing I haven't been able to show you is that when you have the keys on your person and you walk up to the car when it's locked, it will actually play a little animation of the lights sort of waking up and bringing the car to life along with the front lights. Now the button to release the boot is a little bit obscure because it's not underneath here. Of course you can do it from the function screen in the car, but when you're outside the car you just click this button right here and you've got this nice smooth open, just like so. And there you go. So, much like a lot of the more recent Volvos that provide the option for it, it does have the flexible boot floor. So at the moment, it's in the down position, its lowest position, but you can lift it up and have it resting on these points here to have a nice flat boot floor. But the deeper space, of course, allows you to store larger items. Parcel shelf, of course, can still be fully removed and stowed underneath that boot floor, should you need it to. And you can see here you've got these nice redesigned connectors for actually plugging the car into charging stations. The car itself is of course fully ready for DC fast charging up to 150 kilowatts, which is really, really good. Charges the car really fast. But a lot of charging stations are still using the mode where you plug the car into the station as opposed to the station into your car. So you've got the cable for that should you need it, which is nice. When you want to close the boot, simple button up here, give it a click and the boot comes down. Of course, being a Volvo, safety in mind, as soon as the boot hits something, it's very sensitive, which means that it's not going to injure you should it come down on your head, shoulder, back, whatever it might be. And you can see it does a really nice soft close there. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop in the driver's seat. We'll have a full run through of some of the features on the interior and then we'll close out from there. So, as I mentioned previously, you've got a nice array of controls on the steering wheel itself. If you are currently a Volvo driver, the layout of these buttons will be pretty familiar to you because there are a lot of very similar functionality built into these, but the operation themselves is ever so slightly different. So the actual pads themselves do sort of click in and out, as you can see, but the car will only respond to a button press if you're actually pressing that button whilst it clicks in. So for example, you've got volume up along with the OK function there, volume down, track or station forwards and backwards on the left and right hand sides here, and then you've got the microphone button for activating the Google Assistant built into the car. So the way you turn the volume up is you just rest your thumb on there and then actually click the button in, and you can see on the screen itself the volume is going up and down as I'm pressing those, but if I press it without doing that, it doesn't budge. And that just helps you avoid accidental button presses whilst you're driving down the road, which is really nice. So in terms of the voice assistant, that is accessed just with the button on the right side of the steering wheel over here. Google Assistant, of course, useful as ever. All you have to do is click the button in and say what you want the car to do. So that applies, of course, for things like your navigation, your media, such as your radio stations / Spotify, for example. You can use it for your climate controls and some of the various functions on the car. But because it's Google, you can also ask it more general questions should you need to know something. So for example, you could ask it to find you a charging station, a restaurant, a supermarket or a cafe, but also tell me a joke.
A bit of silliness coming right up. Which computer sings the best? Adele.
Terrible. And you can also ask it general questions about things like the weather, and you don't even have to press the button to do so. So it's got two key phrases built in. You've got, OK Google, what's the weather like in Coventry today?
Today in Coventry, it'll be partly cloudy, with a forecast high of 11 and a low of 4. Currently it's 11 degrees and mostly cloudy.
So you go, provides all the information you could need to know. And also you've got, hey Google, how many feet are in a mile?
1 mile is equivalent to 5,280 feet.
So fully hands-free way of interacting with the system, and of course getting answers to questions that you might have whilst you're driving down your road. I know that I certainly come up with random questions in my head or think to myself, well, how many feet are in a mile? And you can just ask the car and it'll find out for you, which is really nice. Cool. So on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you do have your cruise. This car does feature pilot assist as well as adaptive cruise control. There are a couple of other functions that are built in now, which is lane keep assistant, which will basically aid you in changing lanes, which is really handy. When you want to actually activate, you just press the center button in, this button on the side here, and it changes the mode as displayed up in the top of the screen there as well. So you can see there, that's pilot assist mode, and that's standard cruise control mode right there. The way you'd set is you press this button in like that. Of course, it's not available because we're not in motion, but you'd press the button in and it would set the speed automatically, and you can use the plus and minus to adjust the speed accordingly. Then the button below that is a menu button, which basically allows you to change the view. So you can see a behind view of the car there, or you can toggle it so it just displays a little icon of the car, and of course any warning messages or alerts will be displayed on the right hand side instead. So nice, easy steering wheel controls. Like I mentioned, for your main functions on the screen, it is a full touch screen, but you can use the voice assistant for a majority of things without having to worry about delving into the screen and pressing buttons, which is nice. One other thing that has changed on this car, of course, is the gear selector itself. So as opposed to it being a central sort of dial or knob down in the center here, it is on the steering wheel stalk on the side here. Very simple to operate. All you have to do is put your foot on the brake and then you just push down for drive, for example. You can hear the parking brake automatically whirring off there. For reverse, push it up and then you can see the cameras come up automatically on the center screen. And then when you want park, you just push in the button on the end of the stalk. Parking brake comes on automatically, and now the car is ready to be locked when you get out. Left hand side is, of course, your indicator stalk. So you do have push down to turn the indicator on. If you want to cancel it, just knock it back the other way. And then the same with the right hand side, it puts it on until you either make the turn or key it back like so. You've got the washers on the end of the stalk right there. So you click that button in and that'll do the front wash. You push it in at the bottom and it does the rear wash as well. And you've also got the option to change the windscreen wiper mode just by pulling and pushing on this stalk as well, which is very handy. Cool. So now the big one, the center screen itself. As I mentioned, because it is still using Google's automotive services, you've still got the benefit of the Google Voice Assistant to aid you with certain tasks, but there are less physical buttons on this interior in general, so a lot of the usual functions that you would have physical buttons for on the right or left hand sides of the steering wheel can be accessed through the screen, nice and simply. So, first and foremost, right in the centre of the screen, you'll notice you've got a nice big display for the map showing where we currently are. Of course, because the car is inside, it's noticed that the outside ambient lighting is a little bit darker, which is why it's dimmed the map to the night mode. If you were to pull it outside and it gets into bright sunlight, it would automatically brighten it up so it's much easier to see in daylight conditions. On the map itself, you can see all of the roads actually marked by the patches of colour, and those colours denote the current traffic situation. So you've got down here patches of red, orange, and then green, of course, is for your main big roads that don't have any traffic on them currently. When you want to enter a destination, as I mentioned, you can use your voice assistant right there, but you've also got a nice, easy to use keyboard that pops right up when you tap on the search button at the top of the screen there. So you can just key in what you're looking for. For example, if we're looking for TMS, as you start typing, it brings up suggestions. And ordinarily, it's a very short route in this case, but it would show you the route on the screen itself, and of course presents you with information that you might need to know, such as our rating, opening hours, and of course a phone number that you could just click to call if your phone is paired. Another very useful thing that the electric cars will do is give you an indication of what your estimated charge would be on arrival at the destination, and of course if the journey is longer than the estimated range that you've got left, the car will suggest potential charging stations along the route as well, which is very handy. And of course, just like on your smartphone, you can drag it around with your finger, you can rotate it round, and you can pinch to zoom in and out nice and simply. And just hit recenter, and it goes straight back to where it was. Okay, along the bottom down here, you've got various different functions, so you can directly access the radio, the user's manual, which is very handy, and YouTube, assuming of course the car is stationary. You can view the camera at very low speeds or again whilst the car is stationary, and you can see directly behind the car it does indicate lines to show where the car is likely to end up based on how you turn in the wheel. And the car does have radar sensors built in as well, so as opposed to it just giving you audible beeps, it still does that of course, but as opposed to just the audible beeps by themselves, it also gives you an estimation for how far away objects might be. So for example, if you were pulling backwards into a tight space, it would actually count down how many inches it is until you might be too close to the object behind, which is really nice, and the same with the front of course. It displays on here as well any kind of incursions on the parking sensors on the diagram of the car, and the same thing with the door opening warning. That would display an image of the car basically warning which direction you might be likely to knock someone off their bike or hit someone if you was to open the door at that situation. In the very centre, you've got another way to access the voice assistant, of course, so the passenger can do it unless they want to use those key phrases that I mentioned earlier. And then you've got some digital buttons down here for different functions of the car. So you've got the boot release, which you can press and hold, and that will start opening the boot just like so. You probably see the shadow on the picture there. And then of course you can press and hold it again to close it. You've got a button down here which will activate max demisting mode for the interior, of course, just activating full blast hot air for the windscreen and windows to demist it or defrost it. And then you've got a button here to release the glove box. Glove box is in a slightly unorthodox place. You tap the button and it pops right down there. Plenty of storage for things like the service handbook and any kind of pamphlets you might have gotten with the car. Just like that. You do have some more buttons down at the bottom for your hazards. A menu button down here, which allows you to see a full list of applications installed on the car. Of course, this car is integrated fully with Google, so you can actually go into the Play Store and download additional apps if you want to. You've got some different settings down here for your seats, your climate controls, and a volume slider should you want to manually adjust it using the screen as opposed to the up and down buttons on the steering wheel. Now, of course, the car does have heated seats and a heated steering wheel, very nice to have during winter, and you've got independent passenger and driver climate zones should you want them. If not, then they will just be linked up together just like this. Cool. You've also got a full climate menu by accessing the fan button on the side there. So this will show you different modes you've got available to you. You've got auto mode, which is the one that we always recommend. It distributes air nice and evenly through the cabin to achieve a nice, even, uniform temperature. You've got manual mode, so you can manually select where the air is coming out, and you can just turn the climate off completely if you don't want air blowing at present time. And you've got a whole myriad of different options around there for changing different modes for the AC, eco, and changing the zones for where the air is coming out. Of course, like a lot of the most recent Volvos, it does feature the automatic particulate filter in its air HVAC unit. So basically it will filter out any kind of bad toxins that might be trying to come in from the outside world, such as nitrous oxide from exhaust pipes and that kind of thing. And the car can also alert you for things like high pollen levels or particularly bad air quality outside the car as well, which is nice. Now, some of the fun ones that you may not have seen before, especially if the EX30 is new to you. One really handy function is you've got different mood lighting modes for the inside called ambience. So at the moment, we're in the Nordic Twilight mode. So you can see there you've got various different colours stretching around the interior. There's also lights on the undersides of the armrests. And of course, that extends all around the inside of the cabin. You've got various modes. You've got off, which just turns them on to the default white light. You've got forest bath, which is basically nice green lights. And for each of these modes, there is also ambient sounds that can be played alongside them. So if I key the volume up a bit, you can hear the car making soothing ambient noises to accompany the forest lighting and display there. You've got similar with Archipelago, which is probably my favourite because it plays sea noises. You can't beat the sound of waves crashing on the shore. Midsummer, probably a nightmare for you pollen sufferers out there, but still a really nice general ambience inside the car. Nordic Twilight, which is basically designed to look like a beautiful sunset in a Scandinavian country. Play some very nice ambient sounds there. And finally, Northern Lights, which is probably my second favourite one. And of course, Aurora Borealis is something you very commonly get up in Sweden. Very jealous of them up there, but you've got a kind of replication of that on the car screen as well. And like I mentioned, each one does have their own accompanying sounds, which is very nice. Moving back to the home screen. At the top of the screen, as I mentioned, instead of a driver gauge cluster area, you do have different readouts for what the car is currently doing. So your speed appears on the left-hand side, your gear mode right there, and all the other lights such as your current light settings, indicators, full beam, all appears right at the top of the screen there. So it's very easy to see what's going on inside the car. Now, rear view mirror has been altered slightly. You can see it's got this really nice clear surround on it as opposed to the black it used to have previously. Of course, it does still automatically dim if you've got somebody in your rear view mirror that's got their full beam on, and it also does the side mirrors as well. And then you can see at the top here, you've of course got controls for the interior lights, but you've also got some buttons for things like defrosting, so you don't have to wait for the screen to wake up to be able to defrost the car. And you've also got another place to access the hazard light switch. Now, the SOS and on-call buttons are features that Volvo pioneered, and they're absolutely fantastic should you ever require them, which hopefully you wouldn't. SOS for emergency situations, whether that be medical or an accident. The car, of course, does have sensors built in, so if you've been involved in an accident, that the airbags go off, and if you don't get out the car within a certain length of time, it will automatically forward a call through to the emergency services to make sure that you're getting the assistance you might need. And then you've got the on-call button there, which allows you to call Volvo for any kind of direct support, for a breakdown, for instance, or even if you just wanted to book in your service with your local dealer, press and hold the button, and you're speaking to Volvo, which is very nice. In terms of the interior, you can see the colour scheme follows on from the more modern Volvos and of course the R designs of latter years. You've got full black on the interior here to match the lovely charcoal of the steering wheel and various accents around the interior such as the dashboard. And then one of the best features, to basically allow for extra storage space, they basically remodeled the entire interior around saving space in any way they could. Of course, with it being a smaller car, they didn't want to compromise passenger legroom in the rear, but they didn't want to make it a cramped cabin area for front passengers. So, in the centre here, you've got your window switches. At the moment, they're in front window mode, so if I was to push these up and down, it will adjust the front windows. If you want to toggle them to the rear windows, Just tap rear, and now that's doing the rear windows. And you can tap it to toggle it back off. You've also got lock and unlock switches, and a really nifty feature is built in to the armrest here. Push this in on the end, and it pops out two very nice, convenient cup holders. If you push it in, it will stop halfway to allow for a single cup holder, or completely out the way like that. In the center here, you've got two wireless charging pads next to each other, so you can rest your phones there and automatically charge. And then you've got even more storage built in underneath this little flap in the center. You can see you've got storage in there, and also two USB Type-C power outlets, so you can plug phones in and charge them should you want to, as opposed to doing it wirelessly. So lots of really nice smart solutions inside this car. Absolutely fantastic in terms of the feature set. In all honesty, that's pretty much only scratching the surface, because of course you've got the driving experience as well, which none of us have been fortunate enough to experience yet, but we've been told it's absolutely phenomenal. So as soon as we get the go ahead, we'll be making sure to let people know to come into the dealership, book in for a test drive, and of course we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have when you get here. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to know, feel free to give us a call here at the dealership. Our number is 024 76 30 3132, and we'll look forward to taking your inquiry on the EX30 very soon. Take care.